Welcome to Brazos Matters. I'm Jay Sokol. Recently, our community was able to participate in an extraordinary celebration that commemorated what would have been former President George H.W. Bush's 100th birthday. A multi-day gathering brought together the Bush family, friends, former Bush staffers, performers, and of course, just fans of the former president. Well, today's episode brings you a few voices of those who participated. A little later, you'll hear from Texas A&M distinguished alumnus, singer-songwriter and actor Lyle Lovett, who performed outside the Bush Library with his longtime friend and fellow Aggie, Robert Earl King. And you'll also hear from several of the Bush grandchildren who inherited their grandparents' call to public service. But first, a few words from Nancy Bearg, whose own illustrious career within the U.S. government is beyond impressive. She served George Bush during both his vice presidency and his presidency in the realm of national security. So we'll start with Nancy Bearg.
Well, I'm here today out of great respect for George H.W. Bush. He was my boss when he was vice president. I was his first national security advisor. And so I worked closely with him and admired him so much. And then I left and went overseas for a while. But when I came back, he was president, and he asked me to come to the White House. And I was at the National Security Council on the staff there. And my tremendous respect and fondness for him as a human being and as a president, I just couldn't not come. And I knew that some of my colleagues would be here. But I'm excited that it's his 100th birthday. It's been a fabulously run event, really flawless. And being back at the library and in this space is really special. It's seeing the gravesite in the new pavilion that's just opened and having conversations. It's really excellent.
One of the things that I wonder about is we're in a community where we have 70,000 students, and they didn't have direct experiences with George Bush when he was president and may not know a whole lot about him, honestly. So why should they care about the life and legacy of George H.W. Bush?
I think they should care about it because of his very real commitment to public service. He was born that way, and his parents nurtured that in him. And it was so deep in him to both do public service and also to respect people. And so any person with whom he was talking, he respected them. And he was noble in a way. He was also a lot of fun. He had a lovely personality, very, very personable, but very authentic, very, very authentic, very honest, and always willing to say what his values were without being preachy. He was never, that wasn't his personality at all. He just was. And you're just attracted to him. I think the school does a pretty good, I spent an hour over at the school yesterday. I think the school does a pretty good job of conveying that. And fortunately, we're in an era where you can have recorded speeches and you have all these photos that show his face and you can get... People can get an idea of what he's like, but the students very much should care, and the nation should care, and look for people like him to lead us.
Are there some circumstances, some events, some moments that just stand out completely above others that you had with President Bush?
I think his respect for the office, and I think that when Ronald Reagan was shot on March 30th, and the presidency and vice presidency were new, and the way that Vice President Bush conducted himself, for example, the Secret Service, he was in Texas in an airplane flying, and the Secret Service came running into my office and said, when he comes back, he has to land on the White House lawn. He can't go to Andrews. And they said, can you call him and tell him that? And I said, I'll call him and I'll see what he says. And I called him, and I think others had actually called him too, but I didn't know that. And he said, absolutely not, I'm not the president. I will not land on the White House lawn. I am not the president. And so he landed at Andrews and motorcaded in and came to the White House. But he wasn't about to look. And the next day, we had our national security briefing, which I did with him every morning. And at the end of it, he said to me, "Get me a top secret cover sheet." And I did. So this is a red and white sheet that says top secret classified material on it. And he took it. Later, I saw a film clip. He had gone to the hospital. I knew he was going to the hospital to see President Reagan. And he was carrying this top secret document. And my view of that was it was to reassure the American people that Reagan was president, that he was able to receive something like this.
Next, singer-songwriter Lyle Lovett. If you would talk about your connection to President Bush, what was that?
Oh my goodness! I thought President Bush was one of our great presidents, and I never got to play for him at the White House, but every charitable fundraiser that I ever played after he moved back to Houston after his presidency, he and Mrs. Bush were in attendance. They were so incredibly supportive of our community, and after everything they'd done, they wouldn't have had to do a thing. But I tell you, everything I ever played, there were the Bushes, and they were talking to everybody, and they were so gracious and graceful. They were just an inspiration.
Do you recall some of the last conversations you may have had with the president?
Oh my goodness! The last time I got to see him was at the Hurricane Harvey deal here at Reed Arena, and what an amazing room that was. We got to do pictures. Several of us in the band got to do pictures with those 5 former presidents, and to see them and to all in one place, and to get to shake hands with them was just such an honor, such a privilege. And I did play several times for President Bush 43, going back to when he was governor of Texas. First time I played for Governor and Mrs. Bush was at the governor's mansion in Austin at a Christmas party. And so we got to be at the White House with them several times, and played President Clinton's first inauguration, played one of the inaugural balls, played 3 times during the Obama administration. So that night at Reed Arena was the first time I'd ever met President Carter, and he was you could just tell what a lovely person he was. President Bush was in his wheelchair by then, but was just so kind, and it's just one of those occasions you always remember.
So you're a wonderful storyteller on stage and through your songs. What kind of storyteller was President Bush that maybe we weren't privy to?
Oh my goodness! President Bush just helped us understand how things worked. He made sense of the wide world that we aren't privy to, and there was just remember watching him. When he was president, there was just something so trustworthy about him. You could tell he was telling you the truth, and you could tell he was trying his best to help as many people as he could.
One of the well-attended sessions during the Community Day for the 41 at 100 celebration was a panel discussion featuring 8 of George and Barbara Bush's 17 grandchildren. They were George P., Walker, Ellie, Sam, Gigi, Pierce, Robert, and Lauren. And that discussion was moderated by grandson Sam LeBlond. We won't share the entire discussion, but we'll give you a good sampling of the stories they shared. So you'll hear a lot of laughter. You'll also hear some tears as the grandkids describe their relationship with the 41st president and Mrs. Bush.
Our grandparents lived their lives with service as their core value. And we were so lucky to see firsthand how serving others, and it was not just something they talked about. They didn't really talk about it that much. They just did it. Many are familiar with their service to the country, I'm sure. But we got to see simple acts of service every single day. So my question to the team here, team of cousins, How did Gampy and Ganny's lifetime of service impact you? Did it help guide you to your current job or passion? So I'm gonna kick it to our senior member, George P. Maybe you could start us off and talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. My first memory was when I was 3 years old, and Gampy was running for president in 1979. He announced a memorial park on the west side of Houston, and I've got a photo of me holding a balloon saying George Bush for president on it. So needless to say, I mean, politics is, kind of the family profession to a certain extent. I mean, since that time, just so many great campaigns and just great experiences, whether watching the Oak Ridge Boys and other performers that kind of paid homage last night, to just kind of simple acts, like you said, of volunteerism. I mean, I remember when Gampy won, there was this large earthquake in Armenia, and in order to build better relations with the Soviets at the time, he wanted to show American compassion and sent a convoy of Texans and Americans that supported AmeriCares to deliver much-needed medical supplies. And so initially, he commissioned Dad to do it, and then Dad wanted me to join. And here we were behind the Iron Curtain, delivering American supplies. It's beyond kind of just running for office and the electioneering of it. Many of you advanced for him and helped him get votes. But there's the aspect of serving as well when you're in office that he took so seriously, that was infectious, and I think inspired so many other Americans to choose public service as a career.
Yeah. And I know a lot of us here on this panel have chosen to do some things because maybe from the influence, but also because, we love serving other people. But I was hoping maybe someone else could talk a little bit about that impact that Gampy and Ganny's, example had on maybe pointing you in the direction to serve others. Pierce, you want to?
There's a lot of us here, so you got to call us out.
Sorry.
So, I've been the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters for 9 years here in Texas, and I started as a volunteer. I never dreamed I would work there. I signed up to mentor a kid right when I graduated from college which I will not say here in Aggie land.
TU, I think they call it around here.
Oh gosh. But my whole life, I think all of our lives, we witnessed an amazing ability of both of our grandparents to build and foster and maintain relationships with others. Obviously, when our grandfather was president, that was put to very good use. He built the world's largest coalition that has ever been built to push Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. He ended the Cold War through really a force of personality relationship with Mikhail Gorbachev. And that happened without a bullet being fired. The Berlin Wall, the reunification of Germany, now one of our strongest allies, all of that was through these innate gifts of humanity that Gampy just possessed at his core. But we also saw it, I think, through relationships that they built and maintained that really last lifetimes. I think, of course, of Don Rhodes, who joined one of my grandfather's congressional campaigns in like the 60s and never left his side. A guy raised with a really tough childhood. Ended up being one of my grandfather's best friends. Everybody thinks of James Baker and Bob Mossbacher, and those were some of my grandfather's best friends too. But Don Rhodes or Paolo Rendon, who came over to this country on a work visa in 1958 and was with them till their death, lived in the White House. Just amazing stories. I went to her funeral, by the way, right after Gampy died, and every single one of her family came up and they're part of the same family, basically. So, long story short, in my own way, Sam, I noted that, and I thought, what a blessing it is to be related to George and Barbara Bush, to be the grandson. So I signed up to become a mentor, and like everything in life, and I think Gampy understood this fundamentally, when you sign up to give of yourself to someone else, you get so much more in return. First of all, when I met Jalen, I remember walking and thinking I was going to help navigate a kid go to college and all that. And I realized I was so naive, because the minute I met him, I took him to the zoo, and he was 6 years old at the time. And again, I was not working for the agency. I was working in the energy business actually at the time. And walked up to the ticket counter lady, and she, Jalen hands her the ticket, and he looks her in the eye and said, "I know what you're thinking. I got real good-looking eyebrows, don't I?" And it made me realize I was 23 at the time. I was probably going to get pickup advice from this guy to help me in my single days. And sure enough, I see my mother-in-law here. Like 6 years later, I ended up meeting my wife, who was a volunteer in the program. And it's just amazing. And Gampy and Gainey understood so much that when you sign up to do something for someone else, you get 10 to 100x in return.
Thank you, Pierce. I mentioned those simple acts of service, and I think this panel, we have at least 100 each of these kind of examples of Gampy and Gainey, and even though they serve the public, through their positions in government and with their numerous foundations, and they also made time to serve their family, friends, and community. So I would love to share. I would love to, and when they did all that stuff, guess what? No fanfare, no press. Luckily, we were there. So I was hoping someone so we could give some examples of some of these simple acts of kindness that I think really inspired us a lot. I mean, yes, of course, being president was amazing, but they did it all the time. So I was wondering if anybody on the panel here has an example of one of those simple acts of service. Ellie.
I do, yes. I came prepared. So I hope this counts as an act of service, but it's something that really just meant so much to me. I'm pulling up my phone because it's a letter that I wanted to read that Gampy wrote to me when I was in college, and it was a particular semester that I was having a rough time. And I remember I went home, I think it was over Christmas break, and I was just telling my mom, and I was just so down in the dumps, and one day in the mail, I got a letter from Gampy, totally unexpected, and I just wanted to share it with you because it just meant so much to me. It still means so much to me, and it's just the little things he would do like this. So he said, so this is December 3rd, 2007. Okay, hold on. Oh my gosh, okay.
Do you need someone else to read it? I can't read it.
Just I didn't get one word out. Okay. Whew. Okay, dear special, wonderful Ellie. Okay. Oh, sorry. No, I got it.
Unfortunately, I'll give you a second to recover. We have a gene. We also developed a service gene, but also a crying gene from Gampy. So, work with us.
We always joke that we have the tear ducts of Sicilian grandmothers, so just can't help it. Anyway, okay, dear special, wonderful Ellie, your mom told me you tried to call me, and she told me what it was about. Okay. My message back to you is that I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm so sorry, and I'll always be in your corner. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, man.
Sicilian
okay,
grandma, all right.
Time's ticking down.
It's good. We need to kind of, it's good. It's helping us.
Okay. All right. Here we go. We all hit bumps in the road of life, but you will get past this bump and go on to great things. Here are some worry beads. If you ever worry, rub these beads and the worries should fade away. Also, you can pawn them if you go broke in Tanzania. As Dora once asked, are they real? Well, they are. So if you need a Starbucks double latte mocha special, peddle them. One last point, if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, an arm to lift you up in the years ahead, or just plain someone to say, I love you, Ellie, I'm demand. Also, if you need a back to rub, I am demand. And I pay folding green. Good luck in your fascinating life ahead. Out of difficulties come new, exciting challenges. Okay. You will do well, that I'm sure. Devotedly Gampy. Okay.
Woo! Man, yeah. And
I read that a few times before and had no tears, so I'm sorry.
Well, it's the pressure of all the people here watching. So, it's funny that you talk about his letters, and that was one of the ways that he really impacted everyone. I think probably a lot of people in this room got a letter from George H.W. Bush, and I have tons of them, and it's great to have that connection with somebody who has so many friends, and he had all the time in the world to take time for us. So, Gigi, are you ready? I know you were going to do something next, but
mine's not as much of a
Good. Let's bring it back.
When it comes to small acts of service, Gampy and Ganny really integrated that into their everyday life. And I remember being up in Maine and Ganny bringing some of us. I went with her to the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital just to go visit some of the children patients. Or someone last night touched on Gampy shaving his head. One of his agent's sons was diagnosed with leukemia. Just small things like that they did and did so regularly and really impacted, I think, all of us. And so just remember those small moments.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm on my way to Maine tomorrow because Maine's great, but also because we're going to have the Bush Family Classic golf tournament. And what's so interesting about that tournament is that it 100% of the proceeds of our tournament go to the Gary's house. And Gary's house was one of those things that, was not on anybody's radar until it was on George Bush's radar. And, we're so excited to be able to, you guys, why am I the moderator? Okay. We're so excited to be able to take these small causes that Gampy has made into huge causes, and we raised almost half the money for Gary's house in this one event. And so, these are the small little things that Gampy has taken on in Ganny that we're so proud to take on ourselves. Carry the mantle, as this is called. So, really, really exciting. Pierce, you put your hand up, or you're doing tears? Tear man. Okay, good.
Oh, no, I'll say one small
thing. Yeah, please.
Because I see Sully over here.
Yeah, Sully.
This is a typical George H.W. Bush story. When my grandmother died, they had two dogs that Gampy called them two little yappers.
Whew. Brutal.
They were tough dogs.
Minnie and BB.
Yeah, Minnie and BB. But Gampy actually ended up loving them. And at the time when he died, he really was not, very mobile and needed a service dog. And so his aide, Evan Sicily, said, look, why don't we partner with this organization? At first he was against it because he said, I have two dogs. I don't need another dog. And then he very quickly understood, to your point, Sam, that him having Sully and being matched up with the American Vets Service Organization would probably benefit a lot of other military personnel who needed them. And you have to understand, we're all very tired. We had to wake up early.
Yeah, big endorphin dump. Yeah.
Gampy also called it, he said he was the captain of the Bush Ball Club, BAWL.
Yeah.
So, but that's a small, just the small thing. And then that was the last we ever saw Mimi and BB. Nobody knows what happened to him, but we know about Sully. Sully made it to the 100th birthday.
Sully keeps showing. Sully's invited. I don't think Mimi and BB are. Okay. Well, I think as I looked, across the panel here, I see so many different examples of how you guys have taken those lessons from both Gampy and Ganny and served others in your own unique ways. Whether it be through service to your country, like Walker and George P., service-related businesses or foundations, serving your communities. We run the gamut here. So I would love to have some of our, maybe Walker, please, to start and talk about, what are the ways you served? Obviously, you're serving the country. And how did Gampy and Ganny's example kind of lead you down that path? So, Walker, why don't you start off?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, growing up with a grandfather like we had, he's a hero to the country, but he was also a hero to all of us, and he took so much time out of his schedule to focus on each of us all the time and maintain individual relationships with all of us. And so having that hero, I kind of always had an idea of service to country in some form or fashion. And after high school, a year at another Texas school, up north, I decided that I was going to join the Marine Corps. And So joined the Marine Corps and became a machine gunner and deployed. And one of the most important things to me was going back and showing my grandfather what I had accomplished. And after Afghanistan, having some troubles, he pulled me in and told me his story and his way of coping with some of the things that he coped with. And I don't know if he ever talked about that with anybody else. I had certainly never heard it before, but just those individual relationships and the simple things that he did with all of us was so important that we wanted to do things in our lives to make him proud. And so that was my way of not only giving back to him, but to our country as well.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Well, for me, it was, well after 9/11, it was 2006, I believe, when Gampy was the first president to have the honor of having an aircraft carrier named in his honor during his lifetime. Usually it's done posthumously, and so I remember going to Dam Neck and visiting with some of the sailors and just kind of probing questions. It was something that I'd been thinking about. I served in the federal judiciary. I was out of law school, thinking about different options. And long story short, talked to a recruiter and said, I want to join. And got my direct commission. Initially recruited as a JAG. My JAG friends said, including many Aggies, that said, don't do it, go into Intel. And that was kind of the branch that I chose. But, like Walker, for me, it was about service to the country, but there was a deeper part of me that wanted to just honor my grandfather in a really small way of service. And so 10 years of reserves and a deployment later, I was proud to serve.
Again, these were stories and perspectives shared during the recent 41 at 100 event that commemorated what would have been the 100th birthday of former President George H.W. Bush. Reflections that focus greatly on the Bush's commitment to public service. Our thanks to former National Security Advisor Nancy Bearg, distinguished Aggie alumnus Lyle Lovett, and the Bush grandchildren for speaking with KAMU. And by the way, you can watch the entire panel discussion with the Bush grandkids if you visit the website for the George and Barbara Bush Foundation. It's georgeandbarbarabush.org. You'll see the 41 at 100 image, and just click that and then more information. Brazos Matters is a production of Aggieland's Public Radio, 90.9 KAMU FM, a member of Texas A&M University's Division of Marketing and Communications. All Brazos Matters episodes are available on the KAMU website, on the NPR app, YouTube, or on your favorite podcast platform. I'm Jay Sokol. Thanks for listening.